guy. I've just clicked the start button, so let me see if it's working. I think it's working. It says excellent connection.
Proper. Okay. Yeah, everything. Perfect.
Yeah, it seems to be working. Okay, nice. Yeah. So then, how's it going, my guy?
I'm doing amazing, bro. How you doing?
Good, good. We'll keep this one short. I have forgotten what today's topic is.
Yeah, so today's topic that I wanted to talk about is the value of tokenized fiats and stable coins, especially in a bear market or when the market is extremely volatile. So, as we know, right now, the market is going through a little bit of a retracement. As we know, it went and tested its all-time high, Bitcoin, and it tested it a couple of times, and then now it's starting to go down so that it can go retest that old all-time high that it did. And a lot of people obviously lost a lot of money by just simply holding these initial assets, whether they were holding BTC or I know a lot of people were holding massive Solana bags, and that dropped significantly. And so a lot of people are like, we should have been putting our money into stable coins a little bit more, as opposed to holding so much regular crypto.
Oh yeah.
But
And there's that
even with
meme
this,
too, where it's like if it's good enough to screenshot, it's good enough to take profits, right?
that's a big one. I've been a victim of that one too.
Me too.
I got a lot of screenshots of some profits that never got realized.
It's okay. Sometimes I have to wait a whole cycle to come back to that point and then exceed it, but uh,
Mhm.
it's a growing process. You always think like, you know what, I'm gonna risk it for the biscuit, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it don't. That's just part of the game.
Yeah, 1,000%. And that's why I feel like it's so valuable for tokenized fiats to be there, for people to be able to know that they have something there where they can store their money and have it grow there as well. As we know, regardless of the market conditions, because of the type of system that we have built, essentially tokenized fiats are going to be able to be generating yield regardless of the market conditions because the FX markets are constantly going. And that's simply what we're built upon.
And there's just like all these other TradFi concepts that are currently gouging people with huge middleman fees or costs, as well as a bunch of risk vectors from those middlemen as well. It's not just a simple uh, like you're getting most of your gains stolen from you. There's also like these people can just take all of your money as well at a given point in time, or other people who have influence over these centralized entities can take all your money at any given point in time for no real reason at all. So
Mm.
that's problematic. So you could just be Japanese in Canada in 1930 and you're fucked.
Yeah.
Or many other number of things, right? Like every group has been subjugated by some other group throughout history based on bad actors in government. So yeah, those are problems that we mitigate and protect against. But there's also, I guess, two other elements of this. Like one, which is I think your primary point, which is like taking risk off the table into tokenized fiats. Like you're holding core crypto, which is great from a counterparty risk perspective, but in terms of like the reality of you have bills to pay in fiat. If you live in the US, you got to pay it in US dollars. If you live in the Eurozone, you got to pay in euros. In Britain, you pay in British pounds. In Australia, Australian dollars. Japan, so on and so forth. Every region has its own fiat that you need to pay your bills in, buy food in, buy rent, water, electricity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So being able to take risk off the table in terms of your upside and your relative cost of living, so how much bandwidth you have or runway you have, if we're using startup terms, is important because if it costs you 4,000 of your local fiat to exist every single month, and you're up 100,000 in your local fiat, that's pretty good. You might want to take off like 20% or something so you have some bandwidth. Because when that crashes down, assuming let's say you're holding Solana to all of a sudden like 50 grand, you just went from having a lot of runway to having not a lot of runway. Uh, it could go down a lot more too. It could go down to no runway whatsoever. So being able to take risk off the table to capitalize, to take profits, is beneficial. But beyond that, there's the other benefit, and the benefit that I'm most interested in personally, which is like if you're a super risk adverse person, you can have tokenized fiats, and assuming tokenized fiats are all set up properly and it's working properly, then we are the lowest risk function possible because we mitigate all of the counterparty risk and you're getting gains from the issuer of that fiat currency, either from the treasury or the central bank yields. And you're also getting yields from like core functions or utility gains. So people pay a swapping fee or people pay an interest fee or what have you, um, for the benefit that they're getting, for the product or service that they're getting, the utility that they're getting. Um, this essentially allows you to have this baseline of cash flow, and the cash flow arbitrage is more important in my opinion because it allows you to remove that baseline of like, oh, I need 4,000 of my local fiat to exist every month. Well, if your cash flow is 2,000, well, your risk vector is lower, and if you end up getting a lump sum of cash, your ability to tolerate these drawdowns is going to be higher because you got this baseline cash flow. Additionally, if you have above that, let's say you're at 6,000, well, you can put in that 2,000 of play. Maybe you should also have buffer, realistically speaking. So maybe you only play with 1,000, and you can just leave it in forever and just DCA. So these down spikes are super duper rewarding for you because you may have been saving up a few months, like maybe 4, 5, 6 months worth of fees. So you have 6 grand, which you can now dip by at this point, and you're essentially just getting, well, let's say it's Solana, you're getting a 50% discount. If it's Bitcoin, you're getting like a 30 to 40% discount. That's pretty fantastic. That's great. That's a great situation to be in. So yeah, you got those two primary benefits from the tokenized fiats uh, functions within the FiatRexa protocol, because you get that cash flow benefit and that de-risking benefit because of your relative position of risk, which is at the ultimate point. I think no one wants to be homeless, no one wants to starve. So the ultimate point of risk is I don't have enough of my local fiat to buy the things that I need to pay my rent, to pay my mortgage, to pay my property taxes, to buy my food, what have you. Um, that is where the real risk comes in for a lot of people in real terms from their lived experience. So I think that is a really good thing to insulate against. So yeah, you can have one, first and foremost, the ability to take risk off the table into a less risk situation. Whereas with Circle and Tether, they have like in their smart contracts the ability to like do things that are not true to crypto, like just kind of take your tokens. Uh, they are centralized tokens. They are not decentralized tokens. So there is a centralized authority that controls them. So it's very
Yeah.
similar to banking. Yeah,
Hmm.
not so great. And like it's useful for when there's a hack, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because actually, piggybacking off of that point, recently I just looked into the whole situation that had happened with FTX and how, okay, obviously FTX, they a whole lot of things dumped, but then there was also a $500 million hack that happened at the exact same time. And with that whole situation, in terms of how it kind of unfolded with everything, because of obviously they didn't have proper risk vectors, FTT token backing their things, as well as everything crashed. And then from there, also USDC and Tether, they had the ability to freeze a lot of the assets that the criminals took, which was a great thing. But the fact that they can just freeze everything is also kind of scary in and of itself, right?
And
So
problematic, because if you have a bad actor who gets some control of those entities or has influence over those entities, then we're all screwed. I mean, statistically, they're not going to screw all of us because it's not in their best interest to do so. But if you are, let's say that they're oil barons and you are giving people free energy, well, they may not like you so much. So they may not want you to make payroll. There are things that they can do to influence you as their competitor, to exert control over you, which they should not have. And that's a huge liability and a huge risk vector and not good and not okay. And essentially, the total trade off in terms of total societal good is we want something totally decentralized. And yeah, some bad actors get away with shit. I mean, like realistically, the Bybit hack shouldn't have happened in the first place. A lot of the hacks shouldn't have happened in the first place. Like it's due to uh, human error, honest mistakes for the most part, but maybe there is beyond just negligence occurring in some cases, like with FTX. There's much more beyond ignorance, right? Like Sam Bankman Fried was on the record speaking like in 2019 or 2020 with like an anti-crypto person, and he essentially was like, yeah, all crypto's a Ponzi scheme, everything's a Ponzi scheme. Like, so he had no idea what crypto was or any of the fundamentals, and because he didn't understand any of the fundamentals, to him everything, it's okay to just misappropriate capital because that's what everybody does in his worldview, because that's what he's exposed to. That's the world he came from, was a lot of people misappropriating capital and committing fraud, and like that's just normal. That in reality, that's not how the world works. But I can't fault him for his worldviews entirely. You need to hold him accountable for sure, because you don't want to encourage those behaviors and those beliefs, because then you're just going to have everybody stealing from everybody all the time, and society is just not going to work. You can't have trade. You can't build anything of importance. Like a data center without trade is not possible. There are too many disparate elements that need to come together to allow for a data center to exist. Same with like cars, planes. Like realistically, the abundance of food that we now produce today, even though it's not distributed properly due to a whole bunch of regulatory issues, and we don't allow us to feed the population, even though we produce more than enough food to do it 2 times over. There are fundamental issues in not the production, but the supply chain and regulatory side of it that make that unfeasible at the time being. And once we get tokenized fiats up and running and we have everything on chain, it becomes very easy to then solve that problem, because the corrupt problems in that equation and that solution are very easy to see. And once we can shine a light on those points of corruption, it's a lot harder for them to continue to obfuscate, disrupt, and lie and deceive everybody. So that problem can be addressed after we've addressed this first primary problem in society. So yeah, I think tokenized fiats, FTX would have been able to steal the money just the same because it's in their wallet. We've given the tokens to them, but there are also decentralized exchanges that are now much more advanced, as we've talked about before, like Thorchain, Thorswap, etc., etc. That ecosystem is great because of the direct L1 exchanges that are possible. Yeah, hackers are always going to be an issue. Bad actors are always going to be an issue, but we just want to mitigate the risk factor that they present to the market space. If we make it so that they can do less harm and we take out these high concentration points of risk, then cataclysms are completely avoidable and become impossible, because a hacker would have to hack millions or billions of people instead of hacking one person. So it becomes decentralized, which is one of the key benefits. We've moved away from that in crypto because as humans, we've lived under centralization for a very long time. That's what everybody alive today has lived under centralization. That's what they're used to. That's what they're comfortable with. They like being able to point to an authority and be like, that person is responsible. They did this thing. I'm trusting this person, so on and so forth. But if you actually think about it for a minute, that's not so good, because if that person is not trustworthy, you got a huge problem on your hands. Whereas if you are just trusting yourself, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to make errors, like we all do, as is human, right? But you're going to make less and less and less. And as you build more experience and you build more responsibility, aka autonomy, free will, you're going to be able to better take care of yourself and your loved ones. And if you're a good person, you help those around you. If you do fuck up, your community, your friends, your family will step in to help you, because that's what you do for them. So it creates a much more resilient setup for individuals and for communities and for society at large. So I think that puts us into a much better position. Yeah, I think overall though, like there are solutions to completely eliminate these hacking situations, but they are not as valuable as this solution to the market space right now. It's just a question of whether or not the market space recognizes it at this point. It could take a cataclysm to make people realize. Same as like it took the 2008 financial crisis to make a lot of people realize something like Bitcoin was useful, even though other thinkers have been thinking about it for decades before that, generations before that in some instances, a generation being measured in human years of 20 heliocentric cycles. So I think this is something that we need to address. I'm hoping enough people are aware enough that we can engage them today to join the community, to become a contributor, all that jazz, as I will say on every video.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think that like it's definitely, in a sense, yeah, we're looking for the right people that we want to onboard, essentially, because a lot of people especially in these beginning stages of us building, this entire protocol, the FiatRexa protocol, as well as the tokenized fiats, we want the right minds that are going to be able to allow this to really help it flourish in the most beautiful way. Like I've been so much more within crypto communities now, like looking at a lot of the NFT communities and whatnot, and seeing how like their contributor systems have allowed them to build what they've built. And it's exactly just like that. It's simply just they've onboarded the right minds and the right people that at the end of the day all have a simple common interest. Like for example, not to shout them out or anything, but the Azuki project, they a bunch of anime lovers. They're like, oh, let's bring together an anime community, and from here we can build something. And they've built a massive community because of that. And at the end of the day, similarly, we're doing something, but not specific towards, let's say, the niche of like, oh, anime or alt art or culture, but simply we're doing it for finance and money, understanding that we have people and people of everyday life go through all these different experiences because of money. We all need money. As we've spoken about it before, money is a common good, and we believe it should be a common good. But because of the different barriers and problems and systems that are set up that restrict people from being allowed to actually access all the things that they need, it causes them to go through experiences that are absolutely unsatisfactory, like some people having to live in their cars, or some people having to live on the street if they don't even have a car, like not being able to pay their mortgage or not being able to even buy a meal, and all these things. So it's like bringing the people together that have the mindset to be able to build something that will be a system that will not only sustain ourselves, because obviously we also have a vested interest. All of us who are contributors within FiatRexa all have had our own experiences that have made us want to be a part of such a project, right? But we want to build something that will transcend us at the end of the day,
100%,
right?
yes.
So that we can be able to help millions of people, right? So that we can, yeah. And because of that, and also because of the system we have built with governance, it's like everybody that's within that system and is a contributor will have a voice. So it's like we are not one single entity, right?
Yeah.
So that is, to me, I think that is the biggest beauty of it. It's like we all have a say on what the money is and how we handle the money.
And it's like actually to build on that, because I think that's beautifully said. I think like in businesses, you have like a, what do they call it in accounting terms? I believe it is a going concern. So in a business, you want it to maintain the ability to be a going concern. This means like in formations and in structures, you have to address like what happens if our CEO dies, or what happens if our CFO dies, or CMO, or CTO, or key person on team dies. What then? And in some situations where you have like a single node of control, which is highly important to the structure overall, like I would say Elon is probably highly important to the companies that he is in. And if he were to die, those companies have a high chance of dying, right? Like he probably has a shit ton of highly competent people who could fill that gap, but would people trust them to do that? Right? Like if you start from a decentralized base to begin with, it's harder to get going, but it's stronger. If like I die, it doesn't matter. Nothing changes. Like I would hope some people are like, "Damn, he was a good guy. I'm sad he's dead." That would be cool.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Otherwise, it doesn't actually matter. Like there's no real material shift in the protocol, which I think is important. Same as like with Ethereum and Bitcoin and so on and so forth, right? Like when it's actually a decentralized setup, you're not gonna deal with that same risk vector. Of course, like if Vitalik did die, people would be like, "Oh no," and they're gonna sell off because we're used to these centralized setups, and that's people are going to behave with the patterns of behavior that they've always maintained. It doesn't matter if it's logically inconsistent and stupid. That's what they're going to do. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, but in time, as people are born into a world where they grow up with decentralized systems, that behavior is going to disappear. And that means everything is more stable and more resilient, and there's more redundancy, and it's just a better world for everybody. And I think, like, to further build on the beauty of what you were saying, you also mentioned something that resonated with me a few days ago, which I want to just bring onto the stream. Um, you said that like life is in the margins or something like this, right?
Mhm.
And that is so real. I think that like I was so excited when you said that because I was like, yes, that's so real. That's exactly it. Like, if your cost of living is $1,000 and you're only earning 800, your margin is negative. That's not good.
Mhm.
your cost of living is 1,000 and you're earning 1,200, you're earning $200. You got a positive margin. Your life is positive now, And it's crude, but it's simple and it's accurate. Like at the end of the day, life is in the margins. You want to maximize those margins. You want to have higher productivity or profit. You want to have higher yield. You want to have higher disposable income. You want to have all these margin measurements in the positive, and you want them to be bigger. So having a protocol that gives you full control and transparency over that at an individual level is phenomenal, because you can also extrapolate that to a system level or like say a company level or government level or any other type of system with many individual persons or entities. This way, if you're boosting the margins for everybody, phenomenal. But also, if we see like everything transparently, we could be like, hey, why is this pharmaceutical company getting a margin of 98%? Sus. Don't know if that's so good, because they're selling this life-saving material. And oh wow, look, all the people who need this life-saving medicine or material is like negative margin. Maybe we should adjust this as society. Maybe this isn't so good. Like India, for instance, has, from what I can understand, or what I think is correct, they have like the ability to just legalize any producer in the country to produce a patented drug and just sell it to their citizens at a reasonable rate so that their citizens can not die. That's probably a good thing. Like, I'm a big fan of private property and I believe people should benefit from what they do, but also within reasons. Like a lot of things, like I think it was the EpiPen was invented by somebody who like open sourced it. And yet today Americans are paying like this, what, 1,000x markup or whatever it is. That makes no goddamn sense. I'm so sorry. But it's not in our face. It's not super transparent. It's not easy for everybody to see and understand because it's not a tokenized fiat system. So it's obfuscated. It's hidden. Even if it is known, it's not super clear right in your face. And I think maybe what is necessary for good things to happen in society is for things to be super clear and in people's faces. It's kind of like if there's a hidden danger, you're less likely to avoid it. You're more likely to hit it. But if it's a very clear danger in your face, if you hit it at that point, I have a limited amount of sympathy for you, Like now I can cast some
Yeah.
blame onto you as an individual. But when you can't see it, I can't do that. I have trouble being like, oh yeah, it's your fault. You're accountable. You're responsible. You didn't have a choice to be accountable or responsible. You had no free will, no autonomy, no agency, no ability to do anything about it. So let's make it so people
Mhm.
have a choice, have some autonomy, have some agency. I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think so as well. And like to even piggyback off your point, I think something really, really fascinating that could actually be built, maybe the community will want to have this built in the future would be like, how typically, they have like the CPI, and they also have, the basket of goods. Imagine if just like on OpenSea, how you can see the floor price for collections. Imagine if you could see the floor price for products that are commonly in a basket of goods, so you could actually measure what people's spending power is. That would be massive.
Yeah, it took me like weeks to figure out in like 2008, 2009. Like it was not an easy thing to ascertain and then be like, okay, so here's official inflation and CPI, here's real inflation and CPI. And the variance seems to be getting bigger between what is actually happening and what is reported to be happening. Uh, that's problematic because those data points act as frames of reference. So when that frame of reference is wrong, it's like building a castle on a platform or a foundation that is broken. If it is broken, it's never going to work. Like imagine the platform is shifted sideways, like it's not doing what it's supposed to do, and you try to build on top of it, it's going to keep sliding off. You're never going to work. Like it's just not going to happen for you. If you build that foundation out of sand and the wave comes, you're really hooped. Even if the wave was a small one, you're done. You're dusted. If the foundation was strong and the wave was beneath the foundation, you're sitting pretty. Even if your castle was made of sand, you're actually still okay. You should build a castle out of sand to begin with, but the foundation most definitely not. But people can build what they want. Let's just give them a good foundation to build from at least. So when we have
Mhm.
these key frames of reference, these foundational points like CPI, and you're doing your models and your mathematics and your economics and your planning from these bad data points, you're hooped to begin with. There's no chance. Actually, I do have a whole bunch of that data. I will send you the most recent updated one that I was doing like a little while ago. Um, it's incomplete, but I'll send it to you just because it's interesting to look at. Maybe we will publish this data so people can see what's going on, because that I think is a very good point and that a lot of people
Mhm.
aren't aware of. Yeah, I would say like most people I talk to don't realize that there's like real CPI and then published CPI. They're two totally different numbers. And you derive inflation from these numbers. So you have like real inflation and then you have published inflation. Again, two totally different numbers. But if when you understand real CPI and real inflation, everything makes a lot more sense. The models become much easier to build and your projections become very accurate and you can guess what's going to happen with great probabilistic outcome or great confidence. So
Which makes your financial planning for life actually accurate, so you don't screw yourself over like most Canadians. And I'm sure not even just Canadians, I'm probably guessing most people in the world right now are one emergency from just blowing up their entire life. You get a flat tire, that person's done for. Something happens, medical emergency, done for. Like, so being able to financially plan properly and being able to actually have savings. Like most people nowadays don't have savings,
yeah, they have
right?
debt.
Yeah, massive debt. So like being able to give people the information so that they can be able to, and the tools, right? Because at the end of the day, FiatRexa is going to be providing people with so many different tools that people can be able to use and leverage. And yes, guys, at the end of the day, you guys probably won't know how to use all the tools. You're not supposed to. You're going to end up learning how to use the tools when it is the right time for you to use that tool. Maybe in the beginning, all you need it for is just tokenized fiat and a little bit of yield, like a savings account, because you've never had a savings account. Great. That's going to be a massive benefit for you. Somebody else might use it for the escrow function because they're in business and they're wanting to move product and service around. So they need to be able to have these things happen seamlessly. So that's going to be the thing they find benefit. Some other people, they might have savings. They love traveling. So they're going to want to have a basket of different fiat so that they can spend their money in different countries. Guys, at the end of the day, the protocol has different things for every type of person out there. And what we're doing is providing you guys with all these different things so that as you go on in your financial journey, you will be perfectly equipped and you will have the knowledge to be able to take the steps forward confidently.
100%. I think that is on the money, my guy. Probably a really good place to end. Thank you again. That was a good talk.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for your time.
Likewise. I'll see you.
Ciao. Enjoy your dinner.
Yo, cheers, you too. Peace, bro. OBS.